Times best-selling author Dr. Leonard Sax. Dr. Sax earned his bachelor's degree in biology from MIT at the age of 19 and went on to earn his PhD in psychology and his MD at the University of Pennsylvania. He established a family practice providing care for children and adults for more than 18 years. I don't want to give away too much of what he did because of what he does, because I'll let him share that. Dr. Sax has spent time visiting schools in more than 460 communities over the past 22 years and has written several books for parents, including the bestseller that many of you have written, and some of you have even brought here to be signed tonight, The Collapse of Parenting. Dr. Sax is presenting tonight to start a conversation in a new and non-confrontational way, just as we present to our students with myriad perspectives to consider and discuss. MJDS never endorses one way of parenting, education, or family topics. We offer different perspectives, and again, we appreciate you being here to be a part of the conversation. We are incredibly grateful to the Stark family for making this evening possible for our community. Please help me welcome Dr. Sax.
Thank you again. Again, I want to thank the leadership for giving me this opportunity to meet with you. As you heard, I've written 4 books. And I've prepared a handout for you. I'm going to be citing a lot of research, making a lot of recommendations. The handout is basically the notes I would take if I were attending this presentation. All the main points of the presentation are in the handout. All the scholarly citations are in the handout. You don't need it now. I'd encourage you not to pull it up now. It's not designed for a phone. It's designed for a laptop. It's many pages. But I just want you to be aware that there is a handout so you don't feel like you need to be scribbling notes as we go along. So I want to begin this evening with a question for you. In just a moment, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, indicate what you believe is the answer to this question. This question is based on a longitudinal cohort study, meaning a study in which researchers recruited a large number of kids early in life, followed them throughout childhood, throughout adolescence, and all the way to adulthood to age 32. When each kid was 11 years old, they brought each individual kid in and did a comprehensive assessment to determine for this kid their openness to new ideas. You get the grades from the school. When you do a comprehensive psychological assessment, you can arrive at a quantitative measure of emotional stability, which is a valid measure. Likewise, for friendliness and agreeableness and self-control. You gather all this information when the kid is 11 years old. Then you follow them for another 21 years. 21 years later, when this individual is 32 years old, you track them down. Not a kid anymore, they're an adult. You track them down and you determine for each of these kids, these young adults, their health, their wealth, and their happiness. One of these 5 parameters, measured at 11 years of age, powerfully and accurately predicts health and wealth and happiness 21 years later. And only one of the 5. The other 4 of these parameters predict one or none of the 3 principal outcomes, the 3 principal outcomes being health, wealth, and happiness. And none predict even one very well. But one of these 5 predicts health and wealth and happiness 21 years later. I want you to raise your hand if you believe that one key parameter is openness to new ideas. And look at your neighbor there. Raise your hand if you think it's grades at school. Raise your hand if you think it's emotional stability. Raise your hand if you think it's friendliness and agreeableness. I always get nervous when I visit a town where nobody raises their hand. That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign. Raise your hand if you think it's self-control. All right, I'm going to keep you in suspense. Keep you in suspense. If you leave early, you will not get the answer. But if you stick it out, you will get the answer, and you will get more than the answer. My hope is that when you leave, you will have concrete strategies that you can put in place that will help you to be more effective as a parent and to improve the odds for your son or your daughter. So I want to talk a little bit about attachment, a child's primary attachment. James Coleman was a sociologist at Johns Hopkins 60 years ago and led a team of researchers across the United States, mostly in the Midwest actually, interviewing middle school and high school kids and asking them standardized questions. One of the questions was, if all your friends wanted you to join a particular club and one of your parents did not agree, would you still join? And in that era, most of the teenagers told them they would not join because the opinion of their parents mattered more than the opinion of all their peers. They would not join the club. I have visited over 460 schools over the last 22 years. And I posed an updated version of Dr. Coleman's question to middle school and high school kids across the United States. I've asked them, if all your friends wanted you to sign up for a particular app, would you consult your parents first? And the most common answer I get is not yes, it's not no, it's laughter. The kids burst out laughing. And I'll say, my parents would totally not even understand what this app is about. These kids may say they love their parents, but the opinion of their peers matters more. They care more what their peers say. It's not just about social media. Researchers are finding that this change is now being documented in younger and younger kids, not just high school kids, but elementary school kids. You look across cultures, you find that kids' primary attachment has traditionally been to their parents. Their most important attachment is to their parents. That used to be true in the United States as well, a generation ago, but it's no longer the case, certainly at high school and even at elementary school. Researchers now find many kids at 8 years of age who care more about what their same-age peers think than about what their parents think. And that's a problem, because parents offer unconditional attachment, but same-age peers don't. Good parents nurture, but same-age peers really can't. Good parents make sacrifices for their kids, but same-age peers rarely do so for their friends. So that's my daughter, Sarah. Suppose she were to say to me, I hate you. I'm never going to talk to you ever again as long as I live. She never said that. Let's imagine she did. Well, there would be consequences. Her mother and I would discuss and decide what privileges she would lose and for how long as a result of that outburst. But nothing fundamental would change. She wouldn't lose her place in our home. We wouldn't stop loving her. There's nothing that she could do or say that would cause us to stop loving her. And she knows that. And we are her primary attachment. And so she can relax, because she knows that no matter what, the foundation of her life will not change. But suppose she says those same words to a friend at school. I hate you. I'm never going to talk to you ever again as long as I live. Well, that friendship is over, or it is at least badly damaged. Peer relations are contingent. And every kid knows it. If your self-concept is all about what your friends think of you, you're going to be anxious, because it can change overnight. You want to see an American teenage girl have a total meltdown? Take her phone from her without warning, and she will totally freak out. And she'll be like, Emily doesn't know I don't have my phone. What happens if she texts me and I don't answer? She's going to think I'm ignoring her. She's going to think I don't like her. You can go from being the most popular girl to being the odd girl out in one day, in 5 minutes, and every girl knows it. When peers matter more than parents, kids become fragile, because peer relations are ephemeral and contingent. A strong parent-child relationship greatly decreases the risk of anxiety, depression, and disengagement. Having lots of same-age friends does not decrease the risk of anxiety, depression, or disengagement. We know this. In fact, there is some evidence that the most popular student may actually be an increased risk of anxiety. This is especially true of girls. As I present that research in my book, Girls on the Edge, the golden girl who seems to have it all is sometimes the most anxious girl because she knows how quickly that can all go away. So the theme of tonight's talk is you've got to create that strong parent-child relationship and prioritize that over other relationships. Well, how precisely do you do that? And my answer is real simple. You make time to do fun things together. You make that a priority. Whether it's doing chores, that's Sarah driving the tractor there with the firewood, or going for a hike. Tubing is always a great choice. Or just swinging around in the backyard, or cooking, or making music together, or just going out to a restaurant for fun, or teaching your kids something you really like, which might be golf. That's Sarah sailing. I've taught her to sail, which is something I very much enjoy. Or fishing, or soccer, or rock climbing. That's really fundamental. If you're having lots of fun with your kid, then parenting is a breeze because they want to please you. They don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to let you down. And the parent-child relationship is primary. Let's shift gears for a minute and talk a little bit about screens. And by screens, I mean anything that kids play on that has a screen, whether it's a smartphone, an iPad, a laptop, a video game on a TV. We've got lots of research about screens. We've got lots of research about screens on young children. So in your handout, you will find a link to the American Academy Guidelines for kids under 5 and the American Guideline for kids 5 to 18, 5 to 17 years of age. And these guidelines I fully endorse. They didn't just come out of these they just didn't invent these. These are evidence-based. And there are lots of scholarly research behind this. No screen time under 18 months. A child under 18 months should not be looking at a screen, and that includes television, period. No more than 1 hour a day for kids 18 months to 5 years of age, and that 1 hour should be quality, age-appropriate stuff, Sesame Street being a good example of quality, age-appropriate stuff. But a parent should be there, should be sitting with the kid, interpreting what you're watching, and explaining and talking about it. SpongeBob SquarePants is a bad choice. Any unsupervised use of a screen is a bad choice. No screens in the bedroom. There should not be a TV in your child's bedroom. There should not be a video game console in your child's bedroom. There should not be a TV playing in the background when no one is actually paying attention to it. And that's true at all ages, through 18 years of age. The American Academy of Pediatrics continues with their conclusion that most so-called educational apps on a phone are not educational. They are not as advertised. Digital books with interactive features should be considered games, not books, for young children. We've got some really striking research. These links are all in your handout, showing that among children 3, 4, and 5 years of age, more time looking at screens was associated with lower integrity of brain white matter, and with lower vocabulary and with delayed language skills. And there was no lower bound. There's no safe amount they found. Now, of course, the AAP guidelines said that 1 hour is okay, but their trend line doesn't have a lower bound. And Dr. Hutton said not 18 months, but 3 years of age. Kids should not be looking at screen. Dr. Hutton was the lead investigator on this study. Another study compared preschool kids with less than 30 minutes a day of screens with kids with more than 2 hours a day of screens, and found that kids with more than 2 hours a day had 5 times increased risk, 5 times increased risk of oppositional behavior and tantrums, and 6 times increased risk of attention problems. Melissa Bernstein, who's the Melissa of Melissa and Doug, wrote a very powerful article for Time magazine. The link is in your handout. She's got 6 kids of her own. And she's been reading this research, and she is concerned that young kids' use of screens is really endangering their imagination. Kids have great imagination, and they can take a few sticks and rocks and imagine a universe. But when you give them a video game, suddenly they're looking at a world created by grown-ups. Instead of creating their own world in their own mind, they're just manipulating objects, images made by grown-ups in a world made by grown-ups, and it is atrophying their own imagination. And there's a lot of research to support what Melissa Bernstein is saying there. There's some very troubling research suggesting that American kids are less creative than they were 20 years ago. And we do have valid measures of creativity and a constant yardstick over time. COP stands for Collapse of Parenting. I present that research at length in chapter 4 of my book, Collapse of Parenting. I took a huge chunk of the book and just stuck it in your handout with the scholarly references so you can look at that stuff as well. How about giving a screen to a child to help them calm down? You're at the doctor's office and the kid is crying, or any setting where you're just having issues getting your child to settle down. Well, we've got good research on that. Researchers, and this was just published 2 months ago. Researchers at the University of Michigan interviewed parents of 422 kids, 3, 4, and 5 years of age, and found that parents who were using screens more, they followed these kids over time. So at time 1, how often do you let your child look at a screen or give your child a screen to help them calm down? Parents who were more likely to do that, 6 months later, those kids are more irritable, more emotionally reactive. And they make a very compelling case because they control for race, ethnicity, household income, family composition, language spoken at home, every other confounded variable. Basically looking at 2 identical kids, same family composition, but one parent gives their kid a screen to help them calm down, and another parent doesn't. And you find that the kid who is given a screen in an attempt to help them to settle, that kid 6 months later is more likely to be irritable and reactive, and that is more true if the kid was irritable at time 0. It's more true for boys than it is for girls. And not really that surprising because Boston University researchers had found something similar earlier, although this Boston University study was not a longitudinal study, it was a slice of time study showing that 2-year-olds who were using screens more had poor self-regulation compared to 2-year-olds who did not. When a child is upset at 2, 3, 4, 5 years of age, when you hand them a screen to get them to settle down, you're teaching kids to deal with stress by looking at a screen. Don't send that message. Interact with your child instead. So there's a mother in my own practice who keeps Tinkerbell in reserve. Her 3-year-old daughter loves Tinkerbell, but the mom never mentions her unless the child is getting upset. And then mom will pull out her secret weapon and she'll say, "Did you see Tinkerbell?" "No, she was just here and she gave me pixie dust." Close your eyes. The child will close her eyes and then she'll sprinkle pixie dust over her and tickle the back of her head. Close your eyes. Did you feel that? Yeah. I think I'm starting to flow, mom says. Because I got some too. And it's very effective, this mom says. It takes her mind off the stressful situation of being in the doctor's office and not feeling well. evoke magical entities, monsters, fairies, demons, angels. You know, the refrigerator door open, you know there's a monster in the refrigerator. The refrigerator door is open, he starts to wake up. If it stays open long enough, he'll come out and snatch the little kids and take them away to his cave. Isn't that just lying? So I suggested to a parent that she do this, and the parent pushed back. She said, I'm sorry, we don't do fairies or monsters or Santa Claus. We don't do any of that stuff. It's just lying to a child. There are no fairies. There are no monsters. There's no Santa Claus. We're not going to lie to our child. So this is a recent book by an NPR reporter, Michael Duplass. And she spent time with parents, Native Alaskan parents in the Arctic, with indigenous parents in Mexico, and with parents in sub-Saharan Africa. Traditional parenting from cultures that have been around for thousands of years. And one of her observations is that they all do this. They all talk about fairies and monsters and witches and demons. And when we find that cultures in different times, in different places have used this, I think we can be reasonably confident. It's probably a good strategy that does not have long-term downside. Now, I do have to put in a disclaimer regarding that book, Hunter-Gatherer Parent. I have really mixed feelings about it. It's essentially not a scholarly book. It's a series of anecdotes. She relies very heavily on her daughter, Rosie. And if it worked for Rosie, it should work for you too. And I have a problem with that. She pays no attention to gender differences, no recognition that what might work for a 3-year-old girl might not work for a 3-year-old boy. And her doctorate is in chemistry, which she acknowledges is utterly irrelevant to this topic. So I'm not endorsing the book wholesale, but I do find some things useful. And certainly her observation that indigenous parents around the world invoke angels, demons, fairies, monsters with 3-year-olds. I think that's something to think about. Okay, you come home, you're busy. You got to make supper. And you've got a very young child. There's a great temptation to set your child in front of a screen so that you can do your work and SpongeBob SquarePants can do the babysitting. I understand that temptation. But the unintended message you're sending, day after day, week after week, month after month, you're sending your kid off to play or to watch TV while you work. You're teaching your kid that that's the way the world is. That your job is to play and amuse yourself and watch TV or play whatever you want, and my job is to make your supper. Kids are not born knowing how the world works. The variety of human culture is very great. And so kids are born amazingly plastic. They can learn anything. And you're teaching them that your job is to play and amuse yourself and entertain yourself. My job is to make your supper and do the chores. Don't send that message. With the infant, child under 12 months of age, put your baby in a front-facing papoose and do your job. And speak to your child. And explain what you're doing. Okay, I gotta chop these onions. Yeah, okay, what do we do next? We gotta get some lettuce. Okay, let's chop up the lettuce. Yeah, let's saute the onions. Now, obviously, a baby is not going to understand. A very young baby isn't going to understand anything, and an older baby is not going to understand most of anything. But you're communicating something important, which is that, hey, these chores need to be done. I want you to understand what we're doing here. The toddler who's too old for a front-facing papoose. You want to engage that toddler in the work you are doing. Yes, it's going to slow you down, but it's going to pay off big time just a few years down the road. Young kids want to help. And this is a robust observation that all the anthropologists have made across cultures. 18-month-olds want to help. 2-year-olds want to help. And they'll waddle in and try to help. And don't say, no, you can't be in here. You got knives. Go away. Don't do that. Think about the meal you're going to make and create a meal where your kid can help. Shucking corn is something 2-year-olds can do. Tearing lettuce into smaller pieces is something 18-month-olds can do. And they take it very seriously. And they're really excited to be included. And you're communicating something really important, which is that, hey, we are a family. And here's a job that needs to be done, and you're going to help. And they love to be included. Tearing lettuce into smaller pieces of lettuce, absolutely age appropriate for an 18-month-old. They can understand it, even if they can't verbalize it. You show them what to do, and they'll do it. So, one area where I agree with Michael Lee DeClef is that encouraging toddlers to help creates a foundation for a family culture in which kids do chores. Again, she observes that the Yupik Native Alaskans of the Arctic, the indigenous people of Mexico, the sub-Saharan tribes that she lived with, they don't have kids playing games while the grown-ups are doing chores. The kids are always helping the grown-ups to do the chores. That appears to be the way most humans have lived, at least for the last 10,000 years, and it works. And those kids grow up to contribute to the family. They wake up and they look how they can help the family, what needs to be done, and they do it on their own at 5 years of age. I'm a family doctor. I see so many parents of 8 and 10 and 12-year-old. The parent says, I'm trying to get my kid to help with the chores, and he totally hates to do chores. And I'm trying incentives and paying money, and it's really not that effective. Money doesn't seem to motivate. Yeah, well, this kid at 8 years of age is in 8 years of indoctrination into a world where you do the chores while he watches TV. And now suddenly you're saying, oh, the rules have changed. Well, that makes no sense. Kids are not born knowing the rules. They learn the rules based on experience. And for an 8-year-old, if that's the way it's always been, then that's the way it should be. If it's always been the case that he watches TV while you make supper, that's the way it's going to be. And your attempt to say, oh, I'm changing the rules. No, the sun rises in the east. It's always been that way. You can't change the rules like that. You're just going to have an angry kid. And money will not be effective in most cases. And I wouldn't recommend it. So let's look at this from a different perspective. What really matters? What should my highest priority be as a parent? Until fairly recently, the answer to that question might have been a guess or a matter of opinion, but not anymore. I would argue that we now have good research that allows us to give an evidence-based answer to that question. And I'm referring again to longitudinal cohort studies. So these, again, are studies in which researchers follow kids from early ages throughout childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood to see what characteristic of a child that I can influence determines good outcomes. Good outcomes like having a job instead of being involuntarily unemployed, being in good health, not being addicted to drugs or alcohol, not being convicted of a felony. We look at all these outcomes. Turns out, as all of you know, because none of you raised your hand for grades at school, that whether you got an A or a B in middle school accounts for almost none of the variance. Turns out that character is what counts. So character here means self-control and honesty. Low self-control, measured at 11 years of age, predicts a high risk of poor physical health 21 years later when that kid is 32. Low self-control at 11 years of age predicts a high risk of addiction to drugs or alcohol 21 years later. High self-control at age 11 predicts a low risk of poor physical health and a low risk of addiction to drugs or alcohol 21 years later. Low self-control at age 11 predicts a high risk of financial struggles 21 years later. High self-control at age 11 predicts a low risk of financial struggles 21 years later. Low self-control at age 11 predicts a low credit rating 21 years later. High self-control at age 11 predicts a high credit rating 21 years later. So my answer to the question, what really matters? What should our first priority be with our child? I would argue that it is to teach virtue and character. And the funny thing is that American parents used to teach that. American parents used to say things like, hey, I'd rather you get a C on the test honestly than cheat and get an A. Talking now about older kids, it's now common to find American parents who say things like, hey, you want to get into the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, you got to have amazing grades. And there has been an explosion in cheating over the last 20 years, which I'm documenting. Young children, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of age, need a lot of time to just chill, to just be. Whether it's lying in the grass or picking flowers or just looking at dirt. That's what children that age need. But many parents now sign up these kids up for after-school classes and sports, and they are overscheduled. Going from school to computer coding class at 6 years of age. That's crazy. That's not a good idea. What characteristics of a child, measured when the child is 11 years old, powerfully and accurately predicts health and wealth and happiness 21 years later? It is self-control and other measures of conscientiousness, like honesty. Psychologists have known for many years that every human personality can be mapped on a 5-dimensional space. The 5 dimensions of human personality are conscientiousness and its subtraits of self-control and honesty, openness to new ideas, friendliness and agreeableness, emotional stability, and extroversion and introversion. Some personality traits are difficult to change, notably extroversion and introversion. And personality does become more fixed as we age. But even young adults can change significantly on some traits, and it turns out that self-control and honesty are not at all innate. They are learned. You must teach them. How do you teach self-control to a 10-year-old? How do you teach self-control to a 10-year-old? You say, no dessert until you eat your vegetables. No games until all the chores are done and all the homework is done. And if that has not been the policy in your home, I encourage you to make it the policy in your home. And if that has not been the policy in your home, I encourage you to sit down with your child and say, hey, we've been doing some things wrong. No more devices at the dinner table, no more TV during supper time, no more video game console in the bedroom, no more TV in the bedroom. If that has not been the policy at home and you make such an announcement, there will be an explosion. And the older the child, the longer and louder the explosion. But if both parents stand their ground, emphasis on the word both, if both parents stand their ground, after 6 weeks, you will have a child with better self-control. And in most cases, a happier child. 6 weeks, not 1 week. The first week can be pretty rough. So that's your job. That is your first job, to teach virtue and character. Again, this is not a sermon. This is a robust empirical finding. I devote 2 chapters in my book, The Collapse of Parenting, to reviewing every relevant longitudinal cohort study that I could find that bears on this question. There's quite a few. And every one of them comes to the same conclusion, that character, meaning self-control and honesty, predicts good outcomes long term. That's your job, to teach virtue. But that requires that you teach with authority. If you're talking to your child about not cheating on a test, and you say, I personally don't think I would cheat on a test because that's not my thing. But hey, you do you, whatever floats your boat. Then you're not teaching anything. I have been a medical doctor in the United States for 36 years. I witnessed firsthand what I've come to call the collapse of American parenting. As recently as 20 years ago, it would have been common to find a parent who said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's not a suggestion, that's a command. Over the last 20 years, I've seen that command soften, morph into a question. And the question is often something like, well, how would you feel if someone did that to you? And the parent has no idea what to say when her son responds, if someone did that to me, I'd kick him in the nuts and then I'd sit on his face. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. V'shinantam levanecha. The next phrase is usually translated something like, teach them diligently to your children. But as many of you know, that's not remotely what the Hebrew says. It would be easy to say that in biblical Hebrew. The verb here would be lamed, to teach. But the verb here is not lamed. The verb is shanan. As Robert Alter shows in his magnificent translation of the Torah, shanan doesn't mean to teach. Shanan means to chisel in stone. So a better translation of Vishinantam Livnecha would be inscribe these laws in the hearts of your children. Chisel these laws in the hearts of your children. You will find that exegesis of Deuteronomy 6 on pages 133, 134 of the Collapse of Parenting. On the next page, I cite a regular columnist for the New York Times. He wrote a column about enlightened parenting, in which she asserts that enlightened parenting means, quote, setting your child free to discover for themselves their own right and wrong. And if in so doing your child becomes a stranger to you, then so be it. End quote. That may seem enlightened, but it is not enlightened. It is a dereliction of duty. And it leads kids adrift, unsure of what's important, what's not important, what the rules are. And the logical outcome of that uncertainty is anxiety, not knowing which way is up or down. It is profoundly inhuman. And I mean that very literally. I say inhuman. What is childhood for? A 4-year-old horse is a mature adult. The Kentucky Derby is raced with 3-year-olds. A 4-year-old human has barely begun. So it can't be about biological maturation, because a horse is a bigger animal than a human, and it's fully mature at 4 years of age. Humans are children or adolescents. Humans are developing for more years than most animals live. Why? Well, we don't have to guess. We have scholars like Dr. Melvin Conner and Emery, who's devoted his professional career to this question, to comparing human development with development of other species, especially other primates. And he wrote this 700-page tome called The Evolution of Childhood. comparing development in humans with development in other species, especially primates. And what the scholars conclude is that human childhood takes as long as it does because it takes many years for parents to teach the child what the child needs to know. The New York Times recommendation that you set your child loose to discover for themselves their own right and wrong is not only an abdication of parental responsibility, it's profoundly inhuman. It's not what our DNA has programmed us to do. Kids are looking to parents for guidance and instruction. Vishinantam levanecha is the Jewish tradition, and it's very wise because you need to chisel those laws in the hearts of your kids, otherwise they will be adrift and unsure and anxious. I took this picture in Times Square, New York City. Pepsi's slogan, live for now. Don't worry about the sugar, live for now. If it feels good, do it. Live for now. Whatever floats your boat. The real hazard of contemporary American culture, the culture of if it feels good, do it, and whatever floats your boat, is that it deliberately undermines self-control. Prioritizes relations with same-age peers over the parent-child relationship and disrespects parental authority. You've got to strengthen the parent-child relationship. And that begins with supper. You know, I watch parents in Caroline at my daughter's school, and I see parents picking up young children, 6 years of age, and they're going off to some activity, soccer. And they're eating on the way to travel team soccer. And the message that is being sent is that being amazing and doing all these activities is more important than a relaxed evening meal at home with the parent. Don't send that message. Cancel the activity. Prioritize family time. No devices allowed at the dinner table. No cell phones allowed at the table. Frank Algar and his colleagues interviewed more than 10,000 kids coast to coast and asked them in the last 7 days, how many evening meals have you had with at least one parent? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. And then for each of these 10,000 plus kids, quantified internalizing problems like anxiety or depression, externalizing problems like hidden wall and anger, positive well-being, pro-social behavior, and life satisfaction, and found a huge benefit of evening meals at home with at least one parent. Not just going from 0 to 7, but at almost every step along the way. Let's compare 5 evening meals with 6 evening meals. Going from 5 to 6, you see a significant decrease in internalizing problems, a significant decrease in externalizing problems, a significant increase in positive well-being and life satisfaction. So you've got to fight for supper at home. If an activity conflicts with supper, cancel the activity. Time at home with a parent is more important. So my wife and I went to buy a new car. And when the salesman found out we had a teenage daughter, he was very excited and wanted to sell us the rear seat entertainment system and handed us this flyer. Let's take a look. The 2 kids have headsets on looking at a screen. Mom is looking back at her kids, smiling as if to say, hey, this is great. We can drive to Minneapolis. Never have to talk to my kids at all. You know, what are we thinking? Everybody's busy. Time is precious. Time in the car is special. It's private. When you're in your car with your child, you should be listening to her, and she should be listening to you, not to Bruno Mars or Cardi B. I've got a whole other spiel about Bruno Mars and Cardi B, which we're not going to get to. Researchers at UCLA followed around middle-income and affluent families, just observing. And they found that the typical middle-income or affluent family, mother, father, son, or daughter, arrive at home, and within minutes, Each family member is in a different room of the house looking at a screen, a different screen. Don't do that. You cannot have a family life if the family is not physically together. No screens in the bedroom, no TV in the bedroom, nothing in the bedroom except a bed. The TV should be in a common room. You can't have a family life if the family is not physically together. I want you to know I practice what I preach. There's no TV in my bedroom. There's no TV in my daughter's bedroom. 15 years ago, I recruited my wife's parents to move in with us. My parents are both dead. That's my father-in-law with his back to the fireplace, and my mother-in-law, and my wife, and my daughter. They're not trying to entertain each other. They're just physically together. There's the TV in the corner. It costs nothing to do this. It's normal and typical in the United States. A typical middle-income family now has multiple TVs. Don't do that. One TV. And parents will say, no, we can't have one TV. I want to have a TV in my bedroom because I want to watch the news. You know, that's not appropriate for my 4-year-old. I want to watch the news. And I say, no, you don't. you really don't need to watch the news. One TV. One TV. We've got a big backyard. We raise a lot of our own vegetables. And a family activity. You're doing stuff together as a family. Board games. A family selfie. That's me and Sarah at Dana Point. Bottom line. Parents have allowed relations with same-age peers to displace the family. You can change that. Cancel the play date. Make a family date instead. I'm not saying your kid can't have any same-age friends. Same-age friends are great. My daughter has several, and they're wonderful. But the parent-child relationship is more important. And when there's not enough time to do both, the parent-child relationship is more important. Cancel the play date. Make a family date instead. American parents especially are allowing screens to become pervasive in the lives of children. Don't do that. Limit, govern, and guide your kids' use of screens. American popular culture now prioritizes self-indulgence over self-control. You and I cannot change Hollywood, but we can change the culture in our own home. You cannot teach a child a virtue which you yourself do not possess. In order to teach your child self-control and honesty, you must be self-controlled and honest. As I say in the closing chapter of my book, The Class of Parenting, in order to become a better parent, you have to become a better person. You can't teach your kid not to look at screens. If you're looking at TikTok and Instagram and screens, and your kid is available. I spoke at a private school near Towson, Maryland. And as we often do when I visit a school, I met with the students in the morning, workshop for teachers in the afternoon, after workshop for teachers in the afternoon, and met with parents in the evening. And when we do that format, I will say to the kids, hey, this evening I'm going to meet with your parents, and I'm going to advise them to limit the amount of time you spend on social media, no more than 30 minutes a day on social media. I'm going to instruct them on apps and how to deploy those apps effectively so that you will be locked out of social media after 30 minutes. And we have found, I say parenthetically, that this has been very effective because then when the parent installs the app, the kid knows it's not just mom being weird, it's mom following the published guidelines. So I invite the kids' comments on that so that they can be heard. So I'm going to tell your parents how to install these apps to limit you to no more than 30 minutes a day on social media. And I say to the kids, do any of you have any comments? When I meet with the kids, it's always question and answer. And one boy raised his hand. And I called on him. And he said, can you teach me how to install that app on my mom's phone? And then he proceeded to tell the entire middle school how he comes from home from school, and he's trying to talk to his mom. And she's looking down at her phone, scrolling through her Instagram, giving distracted, one-word, irrelevant answers. And that just broke my heart. Because here's this boy telling the whole school that his mom would rather look at Instagram than have a conversation with her son. Don't be that parent. In order to become a better parent, you've got to become a better person. You've got to limit your own use of screens in order to limit your kids' use of screens. You find more on these topics in my books, Boys Adrift, Girls on the Edge, Why Gender Matters, The Collapse of Parenting. All 4 of my books are available as audiobooks. I auditioned to read them. They turned me down. They didn't like my voice. I hope you'll take a look at my website and enter your email. You'll get the monthly newsletter I send out. And you can take a look at the other presentations. This is the evidence-based parenting for young kids. There's another talk for parents of kids in grades 3 to 12, where we talk more about social media and video games, and the research shows there. If you found this message useful, or you think any of the other presentations might be of interest, let me know. The Tikva Fund is a Jewish nonprofit headquartered in New York City, in Manhattan, in Midtown. And I will be in Midtown on Monday, March 13th. Tikva, one part of Tikva is called the Jewish Parents Forum, led by Carolyn Brick, with whom I've already had many conversations off the record, but Carol and I will be doing a conversation live in front of an audience, but you can join. We're going to address the question, what is Jewish parenting? How is Jewish parenting different from any other kind of parenting? Is it different? And is Jewish parenting aligned with evidence-based parenting? And what's going on? Why are there so many anxious girls and so many underachieving boys? So again, at my website, you'll be able to get the link to register for that Zoom webinar, and you'll be able to pose your own questions to Carolyn and me during that conference. I'll be returning to Milwaukee April 26th and 27th, in Brookfield, about 30 minutes west. Going to do at least 4 presentations for parents, maybe more. Evidence-based parenting, Girls on the Edge, what's driving this explosion of anxiety and depression among girls, and what can you do to protect your daughter? Beyond Resilience, why are so many kids now so fragile? Boys Adrift, why do we now find so many boys who are unmotivated and underachieving? And what can you do about it to engage your son? Again, all that information is on my website, leonardsax.com. So if you visit, the handout for this talk is leonardsax.com/mjds.pdf. It is case sensitive. It is all lowercase, and you must include the .pdf. My email address is here. If you go ahead and hit the lights, it's time now for your comments, questions, disagreements, or stories you'd like.